Hey fam, it's Rindo, and so it's been already quite some time already since I've last made a video talking about the English dub of the 100 Girlfriends who really love the anime. Back then, we just took a look at the re-listen rather to Hakari, Karane, and Rentarou's voice performances, and just to, in a nutshell on how I perceive their performances, right? Well, it was okay, right? There were certainly some weak points and some strong points as well, but overall it was a very enjoyable experience either way. And essentially, let it brew, right? As I always say, I always love to take my time as well to really understand, right, and get a feel to, and also become more comfortable listening to this English dub cast, right? And currently, with already we already listened to the voices of essentially all of the characters that would appear in the season, from Hakari to Hahari, right? Well, let's go back to talk about that, shall we? Before diving into Shizuka, Nano, Kusuri, and Hahari's voice, let's take a look back at Rentarou, Hakari, and the Karanes. Now, for Rentarou overall, generally speaking, I really love it, from the gag lines to the heartfelt and dramatic moments that Rentarou would exhibit. It really does feel indeed that Rentarou's voice acting is really exhibiting this personality of someone who has so much love to give and just this very honest and sincere person, and I really love that. For Hakari, overall, again, pretty okay and very satisfying voice performance, but I feel like her voice would really shine even better, or it really does shine better when it comes to these scenes whenever she would be scheming and such, right? And I think that her playful and flirtatious tone of voice is something that is really perfect, and it really hits the mark perfectly on that matter, at least, right, to some degree, and I really love it. Also, in a lot of the more serious moments as well, I found myself that it also really fits to that of the nature of Hakari's character being this very prestigious person, right? And yeah, on that part, the gap away between ecchi person and very prim and proper person, I really love how it blends together, and at times you really also can differentiate the difference in tone of voice between the two of them. For the Karane, same impression as before, but what I have to say or add on as well is that I've noticed that sometimes in translating the lines of Karane, it makes her come across as, rough at times, and even less tsundere. And I even get surprised in these laugh out loud moments, spit my beer out moments, because of the way, or when Karane says something that just hits the mark or misses the mark completely, right? It was surprising and shocking indeed. I mean, I know the original intent, or what the intent of the message is supposed to be, but I feel like the words that come from her mouth doesn't match it, so to speak, right? And even the way that she approaches or says the line, right, the line delivery is also something else, I would say. Another thing as well is that the tone of her voice, I feel like sometimes it would overpower her words, so most of the time, or sometimes, you really couldn't understand her unless if there are subtitles or if you listen closely, right? But you know what, fam, regardless, overall, Karane's really cool lines or dialogues really never misses. I find them to be super cool and satisfying. Now let's move on to Shizuka, who is voiced by Sarah Ragsdale. Now, first of all, her text-to-speech aspect of Shizuka's way of conversation, right, is pretty okay. In the English dub, I feel like they really nailed down the filter to make it sound like it's being projected from my phone. So on that aspect, I really love it, right? But when it comes to Shizuka's dialogues, right, I've noticed that there are really two things to consider as well. The first of which is the way that the sentences are formed, because with Shizuka, right, she uses the text-to-speech app on her phone, right, to highlight certain sentences on her ebook to say out loud. But sometimes the sentences are not the sentences that she wanted to use. So what she would do is that she would take phrases or parts of a sentence or quote and stitch them together with another sentence or quote to form the sentence that she needed to say, right, for the right context. And because of that, you would notice that there are some subtle pauses whenever she would whenever the text-to-speech app plays out her sentences, right. Now, that being the case, you can definitely hear the subtle pauses within the English dub and even Japanese dub, right? Which I really, really love. I really love that detail to give it a more authentic feel. But sometimes as well, you can also spot in the English dub that sometimes it feels too run-on sentence-like, for lack of a better term. But overall, on that matter, it's actually really okay, and I really love it. The second thing to consider are the fantasy terminology, seeing that this is in fact an ebook with that's a fantasy story, right? So of course there are going to be terms that are within the fantasy setting, and you do indeed also get a feel for that in the English dub, which I really love. And aside from that as well, her inner monologue, right? Shizuka's inner monologue when she's speaking, in her head, it's so cute and charming, and I really love it. For Nano, who is voiced by Kasi Ewolu, overall, I really, really love her voice performance because it really does fit so well with that of Nano. Her voice is really calm, cool, has a hint of finesse, and really sophisticated and well-mannered, speech style, right? Smooth, simple, delicate, and really again fits the image of Nano extremely, extremely well. In both the moments when Nano, has that sort of poker face expression, right, or emotionless expression, so to quote unquote, right, and also to the moments when she does exhibit a large amount of feelings and emotion at that sort of peak moment, right. Kusuri, who is voiced by Lindsay Shepard, the first impression that I got is that it reminded me of Paimon. And just between us, right, I'm one of those people who gets annoyed at Paimon's voice easily. I'm not a huge fan of Paimon's voice because at times I really do find it so incredibly annoying. But thankfully enough with Kusuri, that's not the case, because at first I may think that, but as soon as I got to hear more of her voice, I find it to be so, so good. Kusuri's Nanoda, which is something that she says at the end of her sentences, right, in the English dub is translated to yup yup, which I really, really love because it sounds so cute, and I think it fits perfectly. And certainly it's, in my opinion, it's way better than just I, right, which AYA, which is the translation or translated version of Kusuri's Nanoda, right, in the Seven Seas translation, right. Now, another thing as well is that Kusuri's voice performance, right, it really reflects well to her character of being this fun, energetic, and really hilarious person. And a lot of the gag lines is executed so perfectly that you really do get a good laugh from it. I also really love the true form of Kusuri's voice, right? It's so good. It even gives off a similar vibe to that of Nano and Hahari. But if there is one thing that I also want to comment on greatly, is that it's this part where whenever Kusuri would say the names of her drugs or medicine, right, some of them sound like they sound like names from Transformers or something, like some of them end with a Tron or something, which is quite a surprise. Really this aspect, right, of Kusuri's character whenever she names her medicine, that's, I guess, the fun part of it, because who knows what it could really be named. The English dub translations for these drug names, right, it's surprising, I would say, but I love it. Now let's move on to Hahari, who is voiced by Cory Petit. Now, her serious side, right, the side that she exhibits when she first met Rentarou, on that aspect, I really love it because it reminded me of someone like one of those, queen or well-established characters that you would find in a JRPG or something, so very, very good. But when it comes to her true self voice, right, when she just goes hog wild on everything that is cute, overall, it is quite good. But one thing that I wanted to also comment as well is this aspect right here. Now, sometimes the gap between her serious tone of voice, right, and her lovey-dovey tone of voice has this very subtle difference, right? And mainly it's because it's on just towards her expression, right, and the words that she uses and the tone that she delivers it in. Because for me, what really sold Sumire Uesaka's performance as the Japanese voice actress of Hahari is that she was able to really surprise us as the audience with that gap between a dignified tone version of Hahari and a love-struck tone of voice version of Hahari, right? So immediately you could almost couldn't you, it's like you couldn't even tell the difference between this Hahari and this Hahari, right? But really, it's all in the tone of voice that make her exhibit that sort of playful mommy vibe, and the English dub performance also executes it very remarkably well. Now, before I wrap up, I want to give my overall thoughts on the voice performances of these characters, right? Certainly, there are some strong and weak points. Now, let's address the weak points first, right? I've noticed sometimes that whenever the characters would speak, some of their expressions or sentences or words that they use, right, or the way of when they deliver their lines, I should say rather, is really toned down, right? Or they're really not as over the top or as really gag like or really comedy like, right? Compared to that of the Japanese original dub, right? And indeed, I also wanted to acknowledge as well that there are, as I've said in my previous video as well talking about this, is that there is definitely a change as well to the context of how a line is delivered based on the delivery, right? And of course, the very translations and the choices of words are also a very big impact, but it's also the matter of how that line is delivered, right? I want to acknowledge as well that translations also play a huge factor in it, right? Because indeed, there's also that challenge of translating a specific line that match not only the conversation or the context of the conversation, but also, I believe, also towards the or syncing the mouths of the characters right now. Yeah, that's the term I was looking for. But again, I should also acknowledge these changes, right? And overall, I think that the lines are all perfectly, right? All of the conversations are really good. It's just that I really wish that there's a bit more exaggeration or really amp up the comedy or the gag punchlines to it. And I do have to also admit that sometimes the gag lines, right, also give me a chuckle every now and then as well. I really love it. I found it funny, and it also aligns perfectly with the entire context of everything. And it's not only towards the gag lines, right? But another one of the strong points as well is that they also really do have a strong sense of understanding the characters' personalities and really, giving it their all to really match each and every one of them. And the synergy that's created with all of these characters together, right? This fun bunch of characters with different personalities. I feel like, each and every one of their voices as well is also really, unique towards them, right? And that's something that I also really, really love. So yeah, the overall verdict of the English dub of the Hyakuno anime, it's good, yeah.